The princess was locked in her room, and we could all hear her crying. But when the door finally opened, it wasn't her voice anymore. It started during the harvest festival. The whole kingdom was celebrating, and Princess Lila was in the courtyard with us, laughing and dancing under the lanterns. She had always been kind, the kind of royal you felt proud of. But that night something changed. An old woman came to the castle gates during the festival. No one knew her, but she walked right through the crowd like she belonged there. She was hunched over, with a cloak that dragged on the ground, and when she passed, the air turned cold. The guards tried to stop her, but the woman just smiled and said she had a gift for the princess. Princess Lila, being who she was, stepped forward and told the guards to let her through. "What harm could she do?" Lila said with a laugh. The woman reached into her cloak and pulled out a small mirror. It looked ancient, the glass cloudy and framed with dark metal twisted into strange shapes. She handed it to the princess, who took it without hesitation. "Be careful what you see," the old woman said, her voice like dry leaves. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows as if she'd never been there. That night, Princess Lila didn't come down for dinner. Her maid found her sitting by the window, staring into the mirror. She wouldn't answer when spoken to, just sat there quiet and still. The next morning she locked herself in her room. Days passed and her cries echoed through the castle. They didn't sound like her, too sharp, too desperate. The king ordered the door to be broken down, but when the guards finally burst in, the room was empty. The mirror was lying on the floor and the glass wasn't cloudy anymore. It was clear, too clear. When the queen picked it up, she gasped and dropped it. "She's in there," she whispered, trembling. And when we looked into the glass, we saw her, Princess Lila, trapped behind the surface, pounding on the inside of the mirror, her eyes wide with fear. The king ordered the mirror to be destroyed, but no matter what they did, smashing it, burning it, throwing it into the deepest well, it always came back, sitting on her desk like it had never been touched. No one knows what happened to the princess that night, or what the mirror truly is. But sometimes when the moon is full, we hear her cries again, faint and far away, as if they're coming from somewhere we can't reach. The king tried everything to save her. He brought in scholars, priests, and magicians from every corner of the land, each one claiming they could break the curse. They performed rituals, chanted spells, and burned strange herbs until the castle reeked of smoke and fear. But no matter what they did, the mirror stayed the same, and so did the princess, trapped behind the glass, her hands pressed against the surface like she was begging to be let out. Then one night, the mirror changed. The guards outside the princess's room heard a faint humming sound. It wasn't like her cries. It was low and eerie, vibrating through the stone walls. They rushed in, but the room was empty except for the mirror. And this time the reflection wasn't hers. Instead, the glass showed something else. A dark forest with trees that twisted like they were alive. Shadows moved between them, and a faint light flickered in the distance, like a lantern swaying in the wind. The queen said it was a doorway, that wherever the mirror had taken the princess, it was showing us how to follow. But no one dared to touch it. No one except me. I was just a servant, barely old enough to hold a broom without tripping over it. But I'd always loved the princess. She was the only one who ever treated me like I mattered. So when the king begged for someone, anyone, to step forward and try, I did. The mirror was cold when I touched it, colder than anything I'd felt before, and then it pulled me in. I landed in the forest from the reflection, the air thick and wet like a storm was coming. The light I'd seen was there, bobbing ahead of me, and I knew I had to follow it. But the deeper I went, the more I felt like I wasn't alone. There were whispers in the trees, voices that didn't sound human. I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel them watching me, circling closer. I wanted to turn back, but I thought of Princess Lila, trapped and alone, and I forced myself to keep going. The light led me to a clearing. In the center was the old woman from the festival, sitting by a fire. She looked up when I stepped in, her face more twisted than I remembered, like the years had eaten away at her. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice like wind through broken branches. "Where is she?" I asked, trying to sound brave, even though I wasn't. The woman smiled, and it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. "She made a choice," she said, and so will you.